everyone. Welcome to episode 252 of the Book Cougars, two middle-aged women on the hunt for a good read. I'm Emily.
And I'm Chris.
And we are together again. Chris has been out of town briefly. And this is our first episode, like regularly scheduled episode since the new year. So we have a lot to talk about.
Yes, we do. And we can still say Happy New Year to those of you who may not have listened to our last episode, which was that big old top 10 annual Bookapalooza with Russell of Ink and Paper blog.
A lot of fun. It built my TBR.
For sure.
Probably built y'all's too.
But we wanted to start this episode, as always, with huge thanks to our patrons over on Patreon. We'd like to welcome Adele, Peg, and Renee. Thank you so much for joining the community and helping us over there. And then also big thanks to Rachel and Julie, who increased their monthly patronage.
We really appreciate your support.
So much. And thanks also to everyone who has shopped at our bookshop.org affiliate page. That is a place where you choose who you'd like to support when you make a purchase. And if you shop from our links, our affiliate links, we do get a little kickback. Independent bookstores across the country get a little kickback. And of course, they make money too to keep this independent online book ordering service alive and well.
Indeed. And they're doing really well. You know, when they started out trying to compete with Big Bad A, you know, it was an uphill battle and they've done really well. So we appreciate you shopping to help support us and to help support independent booksellers as well. And we see a lot of people are buying their copies of Frankenstein.
Yes. A reminder about Frankenstein being our first quarter read-along pick in our year of reading page-to-film adaptations. We're super excited about this. I think it's the oldest piece of literature where we've chosen as a read-along book. And for those of you who might be hesitating about Frankenstein, we had a wonderful email from listener Margaret who wrote in about it, and she wrote this. She said, Frankenstein, I would have never picked up this book without your prompt. And while it was a little challenging at the start, I'm having difficulty putting it down. Housework be damned. So thanks for the encouragement, Margaret.
Yes, and also I think I'm going to make that my mantra for the entire year. Housework be damned. And our Zoom conversation is going to take place on Sunday, March 8th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Just send us an email at bookcougars@gmail.com if you want to join the conversation. And then we're also going to be watching adaptations of that. There's several to choose from.
Oh, yeah, like several hundred. So we'll put a link to a Wikipedia page in the show notes where you can see a huge list of all the different types of adaptations of the novel. And before we move on to discussing listener top 10s, we did want to thank everyone who submitted their bingo cards. Last year, our theme was ghost stories, and we had a ghost story themed bingo card. And Julie from Washington State was our winner.
Congratulations, Julie. And speaking of bookshop.org, she received a gift card to bookshop.org. We're going to be having a page-to-screen bingo card. We don't have it quite finished yet, but we will be releasing that in February if you want to play along.
It is in the works.
It is in the works.
So, okay, let's move on here to listener top 10s. Drum roll, please.
Well, we had a Google form that people could fill out, and there was a comment section when they put their top 10s in. And I just did want to say that some of the comments had me giggling, including frequent, "This is hard." We can totally relate. One person said, actually many more than one person put more books in the comment section, but one person said, "Here's my number 11. It's an honorable mention. You guys cheat too." Yes, we do. If you listened to our top 10 episode, we did. And then another person said that they read exclusively audiobooks and the narrator makes a huge impact on what hits their top 10, which is so true. Mm-hmm. And then one little fun note, pun intended, another person who filled out the form in the comments said that all year long they use a note app on their phone to track their top reads. And I thought, oh, that's smart. Then you don't have to try to dig them out at the end of the year.
Right, and your phone is usually with you, so you can easily pop things in there and theoretically not forget to.
Right, exactly. And then remember to look at it and find it.
Yes.
So here are the top 10 listener top 10s of the year. And just a reminder that we put these in the show notes, but then we also make a list on our bookshop.org page that has the top 10s. For the whole year, listener top 10s of 2024 has been on our page. And now this year, I'm going to switch it over and it'll become top 10s of 2025. Now, like last year, we had some ties. So for the listeners, it's actually a top 15. And I'm just going to read them off. And these are fiction.
Well, and the first one, though, was a runaway. I don't know that we've ever had that big of a gap between the first spot and the second, but it was very substantial.
Yes. And it's The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. 22 people put this in as a top read. That's a lot. Yeah. And then next up is Memorial Days by Geraldine Brooks, Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConney, Heart the Lover, Lily King, Broken Country, Claire Leslie Hall, Stoneyard Devotional, Charlotte Wood, The Road to Tender Hearts, Annie Hartnett, The Briar Club, Kate Quinn, Atmosphere, Taylor Jenkins Reid, James Percival Everett, which I'm pretty sure was a listener top 10 last year too. I did not fact check that. Buckeye by Patrick Ryan, Beautyland by Mary Helene Bertino, Culpability by Bruce Holsinger, and The Frozen River by Ariel Lahan, which I'm also pretty sure was a listener top 10 from 2024.
I'm pretty sure it was, because when I saw it on this top 10, I was like, oh my gosh. And last year I said the same thing. I really need to get on that book because I have a copy. I don't know what my
it's so good
issue is. Okay.
And actually I misspoke because I just said they're all fiction, but actually number 2, Memorial Days by Geraldine Brooks, is a memoir.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. So look at that. I think that might be the first time too that we've had a nonfiction so high up on our list, because looking at the list, the first time a nonfiction came onto the list was Careless People by Sarah Wynne Williams. 3 people listed that as their top 10. I read that last year and really liked it. It came super close to being in my top 10. It's another really great memoir, and it will make you rethink what you think about social media. Some other top nonfictions are Challenger, A True Story of Heroism and Disaster on the Edge of Space by Adam Higginbotham, Jane Austen's Bookshelf by Rebecca Romney, and One Day, Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar El Akkad.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot more books, but we could take the whole episode going through them. Yeah. But these are some highlights. Again, those that we just mentioned will be in the show notes and also on our bookshop.org page. And on the bookshop.org page, it isn't necessarily so you can buy them. It's just an easy place to go and read more about them if you'd like. Thank you, everybody who put your books in the forum. It's so fun to watch them roll in. You build our TBR list as well.
Absolutely. And there's so many books that just got one vote. And, so many of those I haven't heard of. Mm-hmm. A couple of them I have. A couple of them I actually read this last year or in years past.
So, Chris, what are you currently reading?
Well, I just started a wonderful new biography called Her Life in Ink. Elizabeth Jordan, journalist, editor, and mystery author. This is by Sharon Harris. It comes out on February 10th from Lyons Press, and we're really looking forward to talking with Sharon Harris on an upcoming episode, too, about this biography.
Yes, I have it in my sweaty little palms as well, and I can't wait to read it. Well, I'm reading a memoir, Joyride by Susan Orlean. This book came out in October, and it's about her writing life, and I'm listening to it as well, and Susan Orlean does narrate the audiobook and is doing a great job so far. I'm a couple chapters in. Some of you will recognize her name. She is a well-known narrative nonfiction writer, writes often for The New Yorker, wrote The Library Book, which was about the burning of the library in LA, and The Orchid Thief, which was adapted into a film adaptation starring Meryl Streep. I'm really enjoying it so far. Again, that was Joyride by Susan Orlean.
Nice. I'm listening to an audiobook called The Seeker and the Monk, Everyday Conversations with Thomas Merton. This is by Sophronia Scott, and it's read by Kelly A. Saunders. And I should say it's a book, too. I'm reading it as an audiobook. And this one I came across an email from the local chapter of the Thomas Merton Society. They're going to have her as a speaker for their spring event. And it sounded pretty good. I am a fan of Thomas Merton's work. I haven't read a ton of it, but I like what I have read. And so this book, I should say, is about Scott's relationship with Thomas Merton. 40 years after he's dead, she starts reading his journals. And I will say really quickly, early on in the book, she talks about how she first heard Thomas Merton's words during an MFA class. And the instructor read this wonderful quote from him. She's like, oh, that's beautiful. And so she went to the library. They didn't have it there. She interlibrary loaned it. It took forever for the book to come in. And when it came in, she's like, I stood in the library and I was flipping through it to try and find that passage because I wanted to see if it was as beautiful on the page as it was when it was read to me. And she couldn't find it. And she thought, well, maybe the instructor quoted the wrong title or something weird. But then she noticed that pages had been cut out. And it was those pages that she needed to read that had been cut out. So that began her relationship with Thomas Merton. And this book is looking at her life and his life and faith issues, civil rights, racism, through a conversation with him in his journals. So I've been listening to it at night when I'm falling asleep, when I was out of town, and I will be starting it again from the beginning just to actually pay more close attention to it. But everything I've heard so far makes me also want to get a hard copy of it so I can, tab things. So again, that's The Seeker and the Monk. This came out in 2021, so it's been around a bit. It's by Sophronia Scott.
I've been doing that with my audiobooks a lot, like listening to them at night and then in the morning just starting from where I had left them the day before. Mm-hmm. But there is something nice about kind of having it in your mind as you're going to sleep. So I'm also reading Kin by Tayari Jones. This is a novel that is pubbing on February 24th. This is something that we talked about in the last episode. This is one of the books that Russell is really looking forward to reading as well. And it's about two young girls, Vernice, who goes by the nickname Niecy, and Annie, and both are motherless, but in different ways. And they befriend each other. They're growing up in Honeysuckle, Louisiana. And I'm at the point in the novel now where we've had some of their childhood years, and now they're both graduated from high school, and they head off in different directions. And my understanding is they end up coming back together again later in their life, but I haven't gotten to that part. Her writing is so beautiful. I'm really enjoying it. Put it on your pre-order list and tell your library about it. I mean, I'm sure they know, but it doesn't hurt to remind them that this is going to be a big hit. Kin by Tayari Jones. What did you just read, Chris?
Well, you know what? I went back to our prior episode. So what would that have been? Not the last one, but the one before, episode 250, to see what I listed as currently reading, just to see how I did. I did not get back to Henry James's short story, The Romance of Certain Old Clothes. I will eventually get back to that. I had started it, but However, I did finish Beth is Dead by Katie Burnett. This is a new young adult novel, thriller, mystery, family saga, coming of age type novel that is a tribute to Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. A love letter to that, updating the characters for modern day situations and modern day life, you could say. The title is Beth is Dead. She is indeed dead. There are scenes with her, though, alive in the book, because each chapter is told from a different sister's perspective. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Little Women, there are 4 sisters, and in the original, Beth dies of a disease, and in this new telling, Beth is Dead, she died from an accident or she was murdered. The investigation is part of this story. I've talked about this already. I know it was on my top 10s, so I won't go into much more detail. I think if you are looking online at books these days, it's probably crossed your path because it is selling really well and a lot of people are talking about it. Even if you're not into Little Women, It's a really good mystery thriller, solid situation going on, an investigation, and the characters, I love them all. So again, that is Beth is Dead by Katie Burnett, out now.
And we forgot to mention episode 250, which seems like a lifetime ago because it was in another year, 2025. We talked about how we were going to do a giveaway. And what we decided to do was give away 2 books to newsletter subscribers that were in our top 10s. So a listener did get a copy of Katie's book, Beth is Dead, and another listener and newsletter subscriber, I should say, got a copy of The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. And you were out of town when the finished copy of Beth is Dead came, and it's so beautiful. I don't know if you've gotten to see it in a bookstore.
I have not.
Yeah, because you read an ARC, and I think you might have even read an e-ARC.
I think it might have been the e-ARC that I read.
So if you all are in bookstores or at the library, pick it up. It's a really cool book. It just looks really beautiful.
And so for those of you who might be new, welcome. We should say, if you are a listener and you are enjoying our content, become a newsletter subscriber. It's a free newsletter. We only send 1 newsletter a month on the last day of the month. And newsletter subscribers, every 10th episode, we do a giveaway, and you're automatically entered to win that giveaway as a newsletter subscriber. And you can do that on bookcougars.com.
And we also do a monthly Patreon giveaway for people who are paid Patreon members as well. And that book went out, and that was a copy of Frankenstein this month. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled program. I, too, did finish some books in the last year that I talked about on episode 250 and currently reading. But I'm not going to talk about them because I have 5 books to talk about that I read this year already. And 2 of them, actually, 2 of my final reads of the year hit my top 10s. So I did talk about them last episode. But the novel that I ushered the year in with was Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman. And this is unusual for Emily Fine because it was a reread. And I don't do much rereading at all. Alice Hoffman, I've mentioned, is one of my favorite authors. Part of why I wanted to read this is because I also decided that my first page-to-screen adaptation of the year was going to be Practical Magic. And I read this back in the 90s, which is, a distant memory at this time. I was busy raising my children, and, as much as I remember the book, I don't remember it that well. So a public service announcement, which I mentioned on an earlier episode, there is an abridged and an unabridged version of the audiobook. Because back in the day when this came out, it was pubbed in 1995, they used to do a lot of abridged audiobooks. So if you're an audiobook listener, be careful about that. I listened to the unabridged that was narrated by Christina Moore. Since this book came out, there have been 3 more books published in the series, one of which was a prequel, which Alice Hoffman has gone on record as saying she never thought she would write, which is pretty darn cool. Chris has read all of them in the series, as have I. Brief synopsis, it's about 2 sisters, Gillian and Sally Owens. They are orphaned because their parents die in a tragic fire. They go to live with their aunts, Frances and Bridget, in a small town in Massachusetts. The aunts are considered eccentric/witches. They are kind of ostracized in the community, yet people come to them for help. And the girls grow up watching this occur. They too are ostracized. As they grow up, they take very divergent paths. One of them starts a family and moves out of town, and the other is kind of a wild child. There is also a theme of domestic violence. I loved reading it again. So good. And I don't know that I've ever listened to an Alice Hoffman book on audio, and I enjoyed it. One of the things I've always loved about her writing is her attention to details about nature. And that was really present in this, including I was reminded about the death-eating beetles. I just love her so much.
Yeah, and when you hear them clacking through the wall, death is coming for someone.
Yes. And the Owens sisters are subject to a long-held curse that when they fall in love with men, it doesn't always go well for the men in their lives, which is explained a little bit more in later books in the series. So again, that was Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman. I loved ushering in the year with her.
Well, I finished A Backward Glance by Edith Wharton. This was called an autobiography. I think more recently people are using the word memoir to describe it. This came out in 1934 originally, and Edith Wharton's dates are 1862 to 1937. So in 1934, she was an older woman, and an autobiography is usually like a cradle to grave situation, or a cradle to however old the person is, like really looking at their life. And I think it's fair to retitle this a memoir because she really picks and chooses what she talks about. She does talk about her childhood, different places the family lived, but she does kind of pick and choose things, which is, of course, her prerogative. That's just a statement of fact. It's not a judgment. So she talks about life in New York, in Paris, World War I, Henry James. Oh, dear God. There's a lot of Henry James in here. So
maybe that's why you stopped reading that book.
What, the romance of certain old clothes? Yeah.
Yes.
He sounds like he was a pill, I have to say. And, they were BFFs, and I suppose she presented him as he was, a complicated human being. His nickname was the Master, which take that as you will. But one interesting thing I'll leave everyone with, I highly recommend it if you're an Edith Wharton fan or a fan of memoirs or the 19th century and early 20th. It's a really good read. You go down so many literary rabbit holes with names that you know, names that you don't know. You can spend probably a lifetime looking into the rabbit holes that this book offers. But she talks about Proust and reading In Search of Lost Time. That book came out in 1913. And by that time, Henry James was a little bit down on fiction. He didn't read much because he was really locked into his style of writing with structure and everything. But he loved In Search of Lost Time. It really helped transform his relationship with fiction. So that was kind of cool to hear. And she talks a little bit more about other writers that she read and people she knew. So it's not name droppy, but it is, as memoirs can be. So again, that's A Backward Glance by Edith Wharton. Really recommend it.
Cool. Well, my nonfiction that I ushered the year in with was Body Work, The Radical Power of Personal Narrative by Melissa Febos. And this was talked about as being a craft book. And I would say it was a little bit, but not in the more typical way of offering advice, like straight advice about writing, which I thought was interesting. Melissa Febos is a professor at the University of Iowa, where she teaches in the nonfiction writing program. She's had a very interesting past, including being a heroin addict, being a sex worker, a dominatrix. She's written other books about that, but she refers to that a lot in this book. And the book is very much about how do you write about intimate, sensitive things about yourself and about the people in your life. I ended up, for the most part, consuming it via audiobook, and she narrates it. And I enjoyed it. It wasn't the classic nonfiction experience that I'm looking for to usher in the year, but I did enjoy it. And I guess that's all I'll say. It was a fast read. It's very small. She has a new book out that's about her year of not having sex called The Dry Season. That when I heard about that, I was kind of, I'm not going to say I had an attitude about it, but I thought, no, that's interesting. Why would someone want to write about that? I think a lot of people have had a year dry season in their life. I don't want to speak for everybody. But after I read this and found out that she was a dominatrix and has written books about that, I could see where that would be an interesting follow-up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is called Body Work, The Radical Power of Personal Narrative by Melissa Febos.
Well, later on in this episode, we are going to talk about our 2026 reading intentions. And these two books are part of one of my reading intentions. I read Postmortem and Body of Evidence, both by Patricia Cornwell. These are the first two novels in her Kay Scarpetta series. I love the series. I was a devoted reader of it. I've had my ups and downs with it, but reading a Kay Scarpetta novel is always like connecting with old friends, you know, because you know them so well if you've been reading this series. There are 29 books now in the series. And I've read Postmortem several times because it won so many awards back in the day. I wanted to see what about it was so special. It came out in 1990, and it was really very different in terms of the investigator's job. It was really different for a mystery thriller back then because Cornwell brought in a lot of really high-tech, cutting-edge investigative techniques as part of the story. And it meshes really well with the story and the way people are murdered, and she's investigating the murders and what happened to people. So she's looking at computers, which were new at the time in the work environment. And as the computer system that she describes in the second book, Body of Evidence, it's like you have a mainframe there at the workspace, and then you have, dummy terminals around that employees can tap into. And the high-tech thing in this situation was that there was actually a modem at her home so she could dial into that mainframe computer over the weekends or at nights because, she works 24/7. That was cool. So
I wish Pat could put in that. You remember that sound? Like as soon as you said that, I can still hear that sound of our computers dialing.
The screeching. And, floppy disks, all that good stuff is mentioned. I'm sure, younger readers who go and read this now probably won't know what the hell is being mentioned with some of these things. But looking back as somebody who lived through that introduction of computers into the workspace, it was pretty fun to revisit that. And she also does a lot of forensic investigation with DNA and fibers and other, cutting edge research techniques, which is fun. I know some people don't like the series because of that. It's too technical for them. They want more, relationships and things like that. I think it's a really good balance between that technical stuff and the relationships. Her sidekick kind of is a guy named Marino, who is a sergeant in the first book. He's a lieutenant in the second book, and he's a former New York cop. This is set in Virginia, the initial books in the series, and they just don't see eye to eye very well. Marino's a bit of a caveman. Scarpetta is, an independent professional woman, so they have their issues. And they have their issues all throughout the series, and things get explosive at certain times. And I'm looking forward to rereading these and watching that relationship develop. And, I was so surprised that in these first book, Scarpetta is always smoking. So many people are always smoking, which also took me back. But I forgot that Scarpetta was a smoker and a drinker, and her love life is discussed, which doesn't necessarily always come up in other books. She eventually marries, but anyway, spoiler alert, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I was surprised that the novels were pretty different from one another. Postmortem focuses on a serial killer of women. It's brutal, So these books were definitely not for the cupcake crowd, as we call them.
I'm raising my hand.
Yes.
I was like, just hearing that sentence, that will never be a book I read.
No, you would not.
No offense.
No. Yeah.
Case Scarpetta.
But the way the serial killer chooses his victims was really fascinating. And then I'm not sure, though, if she dealt really well with the reader, because it does happen kind of quick, like the red herrings. I'm not sure, how they panned out. But then the second book, Body of Evidence, that is about a woman writer who was brutally murdered in her house. And that's where a lot of blood comes in. And then other people who knew her start dying as well. And that one, I thought for the longest time, I don't remember reading this. I don't remember. And then something happens. I'm like, oh, okay, it's all coming back to me now. I remember reading it, but I did not recall a bunch of important factors. So they were quite different. They both deal with brutal murders. That is what the series is known for, in part. But they were different enough that I didn't feel like I was reading the same thing, so to say. Again, that's Postmortem by Body of Evidence by Patricia Cornwell. You'll be hearing me talk about this series throughout the year and into 2028.
Well, I finished The Author Weekend by Laura Zigman. This publishes on May 5th, 2026. Thank you to Blackstone Publishing for sending us this advanced reader copy. I really enjoy Laura Zigman's books a lot. And this one is poking at the nest that is the publishing industry. And the protagonist is Faye Wader, and she's a mystery writer on her way to her first ever author weekend where she's hosting readers. think, for those of you who know Ellen Hildebrand and Jennifer Weiner, they both host these, weekends on the Cape and in Nantucket. But she's never done it before. But she does have a competing author named Abby Schuss who does these very often. And she and Abby both became successful writers around the same time. So they're competitors. And Abby's weekends are very popular, as are her books. And so Faye is feeling a lot of competitive vigor. And at the same time, as she's entering into this weekend with all of these people, she has submitted her most recent manuscript to her editor and hasn't heard back. So you really get the sense of that feeling of an author waiting, to find out if they're going to buy the manuscript, if they like it. But the new book isn't the same, kind of in the same vein as all these other books that have been in her series in the past with the same protagonist. It's more menopause, less mystery, is how it's described in the book, because the character Faye and the writer are of the age to be experiencing menopause. And I loved that aspect because to me, what Zygmunt was doing with that is, it's the classic thing of like, people don't want to talk about these things about women. They don't want to hear about it. Publishers would be afraid to publish a book in that vein. I think the tides are turning on that a little bit. Maybe not. Who knows? But the author weekend is taking place on Great Misery Island, which is off the coast of Salem, Massachusetts, and is a real place. I looked it up. I was like, is this a real island? It is. Wow. There also happens to be a little Misery Island right next door. They go, there's a cast of characters, including Faye's stalwart assistant named Jade, who Faye calls the coal green stone. And Jade is just working her little heart out, and Faye isn't always kind to her. And then Hal is Faye's agent. Mary is her editor-publisher. There's an assistant to Mary who has a cat named Zoe, and the cat has an Instagram following of 54,000 people, which is a very funny component of the book. Zygmunt's writing is very funny. I mean, some of her books have been more poignant than funny, but she always has a little bit of humor in them, I feel like. And I should say, even though I just said Laura Zygmunt is really funny, this is actually a mystery novel. So people do perish as you read this story. So it's like another poke at publishing in a certain way. Like the book is meta. It's a book inside of a book, and there are people writing books, etc.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they don't die in the Kate Scarpetta series kind of way.
No. I wouldn't be recommending if there was a lot of blood splatter. The way people die is very interesting, but I'm not going to spoil anything. She's really taking a poke at the publishing industry, at readers like us, the fans. Competition, these authors are under a lot of stress in that realm. And also being a woman of a certain age and trying to make a go of it and support yourself as a writer. I really enjoyed this book. I highly recommend it, and it will be out in the spring before you know it. You can pre-order it now. The Author Weekend by Laura Zygmunt.
Nice.
And she does have a great backlist, so if you would like to see what her writing is like, go for it.
Nice. Another book I read, I listened to as an audiobook, and this was the second book in the Obsidian Sisterhood. The title is A Tangle of Obsidian by Lydia M. Hawk. The narrator was again San Annis. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Same narrator as the first book, which I listened to, is it last year or the year before maybe? This is a really wonderful series. There's 3 of them available at this point. It's about Sister Monica, who is 69 years old, and she kicks ass. It is urban fantasy, sci-fi type books, which I don't read a lot of. I think I first found out about the series through Libro. I think they had that first one maybe as one of the advanced listener copies that you could get if you're part of that program. And I was attracted to the idea of a 69-year-old nun who's kicking ass. So
it's really nice.
Right?
I love it.
Sister Monica was actually kicked out of the church years ago, but she still goes by Sister Monica. In book 1, she is running a safe house for women, and the bad guys come and everything gets blown to hell. And you don't really know what's going on, which I think is maybe part of the fantasy realm. You don't often know what's going on until things start kind of unfolding. Who the bad guys are, they're mages. And in book 2, the action starts something like 7 or 8 weeks after the conclusion of the first book. So Sister Monica, her friend Phoenix, who's a trans woman, there's a Toronto cop who has come along with them as protection, and then a woman named Sister Margaret. They've been healing from their wounds when, again, the bad guys show up. And it's like a giant who shows up, a Goliath. And they're on the run again. And this one, the first one took place a lot in Toronto, I believe. This one actually takes place a lot in Quebec, which is neat because like the fortress is involved in the cathedral in Notre Dame and everything. And the Ursuline sisters, the monastery there of Ursuline sisters plays a key role in the book. So a lot of old nuns who are, kicking butt. And Sister Monica says at one point that when she was 50, she started practicing Thai boxing, which is one reason why she has some stamina to fight the bad guys. But what they're trying to figure out is this stone that she has that she picked up from book 1 that causes her to have powers of healing and other powers, but that's slowly taking over her body. So they're trying to protect the stone. They're trying to protect the alien who brought it to Earth a long time ago and has been being cared for by the Ursuline sisters. And I shouldn't probably say any more. It's fun. I enjoyed it very much. I enjoy the narrator. And if you want to try something with an, kick-ass 69-year-old nun that's fantasy, sci-fi, check it out. Again, the title is A Tangle of Obsidian, and it's book 2 in the Obsidian Sisters series by Lydia M. Hawke. Oh, I wanted to say one more thing. There's a scene where she's getting dressed when, chaos is breaking out again, and she decides to dispense with social expectations and not put on her bra. And I'm like, okay, only somebody with small breasts would write that, because like women with larger breasts, like the bra is an actual support tool that you need if you're going to be running around fighting bad guys. Mm-hmm. So that made me laugh, and I figured we'd get a chuckle out of that together.
I mean, nobody likes to swing off their bra more than me, but I wouldn't do it if I had to do anything that required any sort of physical activity.
Right.
So I read a book that was not on my radar at all, but now that I've read it, I've come to find that it was very popular last year. It was a national bestseller. It's called Theo of Golden by Alan Levi. This is a debut novel. He has written a memoir that was about his time with his brother when I believe his brother was dying of cancer. This is such a delight. I did listen to it as well, narrated by David Morse, who does a beautiful job. It's about Theo, who walks into a small town coffee shop one day. The coffee shop is in Golden, which is a town in the South. We don't really know at the beginning where we are in the South, but we are in the United States. Theo is not originally from the United States. He's from Portugal. So as you're listening to the audiobook, the narrator does a really great job with his accent. And when Theo walks in to order his coffee, he looks around, and there are 92 framed pencil portraits that cover the walls. And he's immediately smitten by these portraits and decides to start buying them and then meeting up with the people who are, quote, the rightful owners. In other words, the people whose image is in this portrait. And he's an older man. He's in his 80s, I believe. And so he's never quite sure what people are going to think when they meet up with him, if they're going to trust him. And as the story develops, you start to learn more about Theo and the background of his life. And you start to learn about the people who live in this town of Golden. It's such a lovely, feel-good story. There is a huge turn that happens. I was listening at the time that it happened, so I think it's about the 80% mark. So it's deep in. I hope that's not too much of a spoiler for people.
You know what? I don't know. I was listening to Hannah of Hannah's Books at BookTuber, and she talked recently about spoilers in terms of like introductions to classics. And she mentioned that some people say you shouldn't even say that there is a twist, but she disagrees with it. She thinks that's fine. So that might be a conversation for us to have a deep dive into eventually. But I don't know. I know Michael Kindness from Books on the Nightstand always said, oh my God, don't tell me about a twist or anything, because he considered it a spoiler that took away the enjoyment of the book.
Well, let us know, listeners, what you think. I'm not going to say what it is, but there is something that happens that was a surprise to me. And I think when you're deep in a novel, sometimes it's really like it's exciting. It definitely made me want to stop my life and just keep listening. Not that I wasn't already enjoying it. I did kind of go down a little path of listening to Alan Levi and interviews and things like that. On his website, there's a really lovely video where he gives his elevator pitch about Theo of Golden and why he wrote it. I will put a link in the show notes. It's really lovely. And he did say that he is writing a second novel that features the character Ellen that appears in this novel. So for any of you who have read it, or if you're going to read it, when you get to the chapters that feature Ellen, I had already knew that that's what he was working on next, and it made me really happy because she's a compelling character. So again, Theo of Golden by Alan Levi, narrated by David Morse. Loved this. It was a great book to be in my first couple weeks of the reading year. I also finished Enormous Wings by Lori Frankel. I talked about this in 2025 because I started it then. This pubs on May 5th, 2026, as well as the Author Weekend. They share a pub date. And Lori Frankel, I read her book, This Is How It Always Is, which pubbed in 2018. And it's about a family with multiple kids. All of them are boys. I think there's 4 of them. And the youngest in the family, from a very early age, decides he wants to dress like a girl. And Lori Frankel, is not afraid to tackle timely, sensitive issues. And in this novel, Enormous Wings, what she is tackling is the subject of women's right to have autonomy over her body, particularly when it comes to pregnancy and abortion. The novel takes place in current day in Austin, Texas. Our protagonist is Pepper Mills. She's 77. She's moved into a retirement community. She starts to have a relationship and gets pregnant. I think the way that she handled how a 77-year-old can get pregnant was really quite brilliant, actually. I'm not going to spoil it. And the novel then really starts to look at this situation from every angle, including medical gaslighting, how women are treated, how things now in this day and age can become so public, what it is like to try to go to a clinic, how hard it is. I mean, you can't, in the state of Texas, it became illegal to seek an abortion in 2022. So you can't do it in that state. What happens to doctors if they know that a patient, if you're a doctor in Texas and you know that your patient is going to go out of state, you can get into a lot of trouble. She really looks at it from all angles. The book suffered for me a little bit because it took me a while to read it. I kept jumping into other books. I don't know why. I think I left it somewhere, maybe. Maybe I left it at Jim's house and it got buried under books, which tends to happen. But once I got back into it, I really did enjoy it. The other thing I like about Frankel's writing is she's Jewish, and she writes about being Jewish in a very, just like matter-of-fact, normal way, but also with a little tinge of humor on occasion, because this one thing that happens with this novel is Pepper's whole family. She has children, adult children with children. She is a grandmother who is pregnant. And so it's a very complicated, right? And so I just wanted to read this one little passage about being Jewish and things that have to do with babies. There is no Jewish law against baby showers. There is Jewish superstition against baby showers. And really, it's not against baby showers. There is Jewish superstition against doing anything other than anticipating the very worst in any given situation. You don't tell pregnant Jews Mazel Tov, congratulations. You tell them B'sha'a Tovah. May your baby come at the right time. May it come in a good hour. May your baby come. Oh. So wonderful. And, really when I was pregnant, a lot of the conversation was, because I'm Jewish, maybe I should say that, do you or don't you have a baby shower? Do you bring anything into your home before the baby is born? There's a lot of superstition around that. So when I got to that paragraph, I was like, oh, she nailed it, you know?
Nice.
It's a really compelling read. Very interesting, and it's so much in the news right now, especially in the United States, about women's rights around their body. Enormous Wings, Lori Frankel, pub date 5/5/26. She really looks at this from every angle, just so people know. I mean, she really does, and I think she did a good job. So the last book I read, I'm just going to talk about briefly because it's been talked about on the podcast before, and I'm very late to the party. The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This was on our listener top 10 last year, the year before, I can't remember. It has a very compelling cover with kind of a scene of woods with pink paint dripping down the front. I vividly remember Chris talking about why she understands after reading it what the pink paint reveals. I, too, am now part of that. I'm in the know, should I say. I enjoyed this. It is narrated by Saskia Malaveld. She did a great job. I do think it's helpful to have a physical copy because one of the things I think Moore did brilliantly in this book is it goes back and forth in time quite a bit. 1950s, 1961, the 70s, and each chapter has a different character point of view, and then she highlights kind of in darker, bold print where we are in the story. And that got a little confusing at the beginning of the audiobook. Once I understood what was happening, it made more sense to me. But I think it is helpful to have both. There's also a cool map in the front of the hard copy. I think they do provide a PDF with the audiobook as well. And this is about a camp in the Adirondacks, a summer camp. And the book opens in 1975 when a camp counselor wakes up and one of the bunks is empty. The camper has gone missing. Her name is Barbara Van Laar. It's a little complicated because her family has ties to the camp. And in the 60s, her brother went missing from the same area. The story, as I said, moves back and forth in time through different points of view. Boy, can she tell a story. I also read Long Bright River by Liz Moore. I think I might have liked that one a titch more, but totally different subject matter. But she really knows how to build a story, and it surprised me. I did not know what the ending was going to be. Very compelling. And it is being made into a series on Netflix. It'll be like hour-long series.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that. I had no desire to read that book. It just didn't sound interesting to me. But then our friend Kate gave me her copy when she finished it. She's like, read it. You're going to like it. So I read it, and I liked it a lot. And that copy is still making the rounds at the college where I work. I know like 2 librarians read it, 1 math professor. I'm not sure who has it now, but it's still making the rounds.
Yeah, well, this one came to me from California, from Aunt Ellen, because I talked about how I found a copy in Colorado when I was visiting my son Jacob in a little free library, and I was so excited. And then my suitcase was too full to bring it home. And so then, you know, like a week later, this paperback copy showed up, and it was from Aunt Ellen, which I so appreciated. So thank you, Ellen. The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. So, Chris, any Biblio adventures?
Yes, I have some that go back to December that were a lot of fun and surprising because they weren't planned at all. They're couch Biblio adventures, I should say. And these were movies that were kind of spin-offs or modern interpretations of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And they're both Hallmark movies because Laura and I watched some holiday Hallmark movies. The first is Christmas Above the Clouds, which is a woman CEO who's like a workaholic who's on a plane. She's boarding a plane to Australia on Christmas Eve because she hates Christmas and she just wants to land when it's not Christmas. So hence this trip to Australia from the States. And on that plane is her ex. That happens. But so while she's on this plane, she gets visited by the ghosts, like it happens to Ebenezer Scrooge, because she's very Scrooge-like. I enjoyed it very much. I like both of the actors that are in there. I've seen other Hallmark movies with them. And then the second one was called A Dickens of a Holiday. And this one was a different type of storyline. It was about a woman who's back in her hometown who... she's in transition, let's put it that way. she's going to be taking over the directing of this long-time production of A Christmas Carol that this town does every year, and they're really known for it. And their star gets laryngitis and can't go on. Well, one of the guys from town is now a big movie star. He's an action-adventure kind of movie star who actually wants to do serious acting. You know, he wants to do more dramatic acting. And their common professor, their old drama professor, is like, you need to reach out to, you know, and she doesn't want to because they kind of have a bit of a history in some ways. Long story short, he comes and then you have what happens. And it was a really good adaptation too, or a fun way to explore, you know, no ghosts come, but people visit their ghosts. Let's put it that way, right? Good movies.
I mean, they seem like the perfect foil to Kay Scarpetta.
Well, exactly, right? I mean, yeah, we'll talk more about Kay Scarpetta and how I'm going to take care of my mental health in a later segment.
Well, I ushered in the new year with Practical Magic, based on the novel by Alice Hoffman. This released in 1998. The novel takes place in New England, but the movie was filmed on Whidbey Island in Washington State. And I felt like such a New England snob now that I live in New England, because I was like, that's not New England. I can tell. It just didn't, you know, there's so many pine trees and everything on Whidbey Island. Anyway, you know, this year, as we're reading book to film adaptations, we're going to be trying to pay more attention to how they adapt these books that we read. It was directed by Griffin Dunn, who I know now more as an actor, and he also wrote a memoir recently, which I didn't write down, but... Oh,
yeah. He's like, is he Joan Didion's nephew or something? One of the librarians at work has encouraged me multiple times to read that memoir. She said he's a really good writer. The Friday Afternoon Club, a family memoir.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about it. I was shocked when I was seeing the credits that he was the director here. I didn't know that he was a director. He was in the show This Is Us. That's how I know of him.
I know him from An American Werewolf in London.
Yes. Yeah, so he's very famous. The movie stars Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman, and they're the sisters, the Owens sisters. And then their aunts are played by Stockard Channing and Diane Wiest. Is that I think that's how you say her name. And then what's fun when you watch these movies, like this movie came out in 1998. There was a very young Evan Rachel Wood and Camilla Bell, who are both very famous in their own rights now, but they had these little cameos as the young sisters when they came to town. The men in the film are Aidan Quinn and Goran Vishnik. Also, both of them, you know, have had careers since then. There was one really big difference between the novel and the film, which was that in the novel, Sandra Bullock's character leaves home and raises her family to try to escape this, you know, the whole thing about being an Owens sister. And in the film, she stays at home. And Nicole Kidman's character goes off. She has a situation with some domestic violence, and her sister comes and rescues her. And then there's kind of some ghost action that takes place after that. One thing that I thought was funny is that Sandra Bullock's character is supposed to be kind of a nerd, but, you know, I don't know if it's because it was the 90s or it was directed by a man, but they're both quite sexy. You know, Sandra Bullock definitely doesn't look like a nerd. And then I also thought it was funny that Nicole Kidman had like this tattoo that peeked out that was on her breast, you know, and you could kind of see it peek out of her shirts. And I thought, now that would nobody would blink an eye at a tattoo anywhere on somebody.
Right.
Tattoos have really changed. And then the other thing about the movie is it's very witchy, like broomsticks and, you know, witch hats. And the book's really not like that at all. It was panned by the critics when it came out. And now it's a cult classic. And now nobody can wait for Practical Magic 2, which comes out in September, including me. I have to say, I do not remember watching the movie at all. So it was fun to go back and revisit it. I had New Year's Day to myself and ushered in, I think I started it over New Year's Eve and then finished it on New Year's Day. And it was so much fun.
You know what? There's another Kay Scarpetta connection here.
Oh, do tell.
Nicole Kidman plays Scarpetta in the new TV adaptation that's coming out in March.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, that's really funny. I am not a fan of Nicole Kidman, so And I know some people are a bit upset about her as, playing Scarpetta. I mean, it has been a long time coming. Like back in the 90s, early 2000s, Demi Moore was going to play Scarpetta in a movie. Never happened. You know how these things, rights get purchased and then movies don't get made and everything. So her doing Scarpetta now, it's a pretty big deal.
Does Demi Moore, does that feel like it fits her character a little more to you?
No, I mean, Scarpetta is blonde, and she's just tiny, short, I just don't really appreciate Nicole Kidman as an actor. So,
wow.
Yeah. You've heard it here.
Yes, I like her, but I wouldn't know if she fits the bill for that.
It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
I know
she's definitely not tiny. She's one of the tallest female actors I know.
Yeah, I think Scarpetta's definitely on the shorter side. But Jamie Lee Curtis she either plays her sister or her mom.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, because then the sister is a children's book author who neglects her own child. And then the mom is kind of a narcissistic something or other who isn't in the first book. She doesn't make an appearance. She's mentioned in the second book. I need to start making a chart about who's in what book.
Yeah.
So I had another meeting of the New Haven History Stewards, which is a group of people who steward history organizations throughout New Haven. And I was invited to it because I oversee the archive at the college where I work. And we met this time. We meet at a different location each time, which is a lot of fun. So you get to see what the different organizations are doing. And so we met at the Schwartzman Center at Yale, which has a fantastic exhibit going on. It started last March. It goes to sometime this March. I don't know the exact date. So if you're local and you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. The title is Shining Light on Truth, Black Lives at Yale and in New Haven. And we had a tour of the exhibit. It's 9,000 square feet.
Wow.
It's huge. And it's on the walls of the Schwartzman Center on 2 different floors. And there are different sections, and the first one talks about enslaved Black people who custodianed Yale, and then former enslaved Blacks and other Blacks who worked at Yale. And then it goes into students who started to attend, which were usually the kids of some of those folks who were there working as custodians or cooks and things like that. And then up to Black people becoming professors at Yale and beyond. So there are photos of these people, and many of them have been identified. There is a photo of a man and a woman who have not yet been identified. But what's fascinating was the tour of it talking about how, these usually Black men, right, who are custodians of a building are in proximity with the rich white sons of men all across the country. And having that proximity brings different types of relationships. And so some of these Black men really got, how can I say it? They had opportunities for education that may not have been classroom type education. One man in particular became so well known and so well respected, he actually became a member of one of the secret societies. And he's one of the few non-student members of one of these secret societies that still exist at Yale. And in his photographs, he's wearing on his tie the symbol of that organization. I mean, that's huge, So hearing the story of how that proximity happened and how it's morphed over the years was really fascinating. One of the people I sat next to when we first started was a man who oversees one of the local historic cemeteries. And we were talking before the tour. And then when the tour started, we walked out and we were standing next to each other looking at this wall of the earliest students. And he started pointing out people. He's like, she's buried there. I know her. And he said the people's names. Like, she was a real mover and shaker in New Haven. So, I just love this learning of history through people from the past with people from today who have such huge knowledge bases. So it's a really great exhibit. Highly recommend it if you can make it there. And if not, we'll put a link to the exhibit's website
Do they have like a virtual exhibit?
I don't know if it's very detailed or if it's just introductory.
Yeah, for sure. Very cool. Well, I had a chance to stop at a local store that was new to me, but apparently has been open for a couple of years, and it's called Slackline Press, and it's right in downtown Brantford, very close to Book Cougars HQ, and they have lovely office supplies, and she also has these block letter presses where she makes cards and also sells other cards that are made in that manner. There's a tiny little bookshelf with used books for sale, and there were actually really good choices, even though there were probably, 15 books on the shelves. I went on a day where she had an opportunity where you could make your own bookmark. So she has a plate in there, and it was already inked, and you got to pull down really hard on this old letterpress and make yourself a bookmark, which I did. I'm showing it to Chris right now, and the design is a really fun one of Brantford, Connecticut, which is the town that Book Cougars headquarters is in. And one of the things that's featured on here is the James Blackstone Library, which is a really beautiful library here in town, and the town green and water and things like that. It was really fun. I have a video of me doing it and some pictures, including a picture of this bookmark. Maybe I'll put it in this month's newsletter.
Yeah,
that would be a lot of fun. Yeah, and I'll put it on social media on Instagram and Facebook. Really fun store. A lot of Japanese office supplies, which are beautiful. I bought myself a really cool paint pen that I can make dots in my journal with. It's purple, my favorite color. So highly recommend if you get a chance. I'll put a link in the show notes to how you can find it. And I should say that on her website, she shows all these old letterpresses that they own. And the one that I got to use, it turns out her name is Brunhilde.
I love that. Well, I had another Couch Biblio adventure. It was an author event with Brad Bigelow for his book. It's a new biography, Virginia Faulkner, A Life in Two Acts. And he was joined by Debbie Applegate, who won a Pulitzer in biography for her biography of Henry Ward Beecher. And her newer biography is called Madam, the biography of Polly Adler, icon of the jazz age. And then also William Fellows, who's a biographer of Mildred Bennett, came. So Brad Bigelow did a, introductory about who Virginia Faulkner was, and she was really mostly well known now, if she's known, for helping to resurrect and maintain and grow Willa Cather's reputation as a writer, and not just a regionalist writer, but an American writer. And I didn't know much about Virginia Faulkner other than that. And he takes his subtitle, A Life in Two Acts, from that Fitzgerald quote that there are no second acts in America. And for Virginia, there was. Like, she initially started as a writer herself. One of the reasons Debbie Applegate was there was because Virginia Faulkner actually wrote Polly Adler's memoir. And that was just such a cool connection. And then William Fellows was there as Mildred Bennett's biographer. Mildred Bennett was the woman who founded the Willa Cather Pioneer Memorial, which is now the National Willa Cather Center, who actually worked with Virginia Faulkner. They were going to co-write a book that fell through. So you got such a great look into Virginia's life just from this conversation. And it was recorded. We'll put a link in the show notes. And I ordered a copy of the biography. It's from University of Nebraska Press. And I look forward to digging into that because she was a real fascinating character with a very diverse background. And what's interesting is Mildred Bennett and Virginia Faulkner, like, they all knew Cather was a lesbian. Everyone back then knew, but it wasn't something that was discussed publicly. So fascinating for me as a Cather fan.
Very fun.
Yeah. So again, that book, if you want to check it out, is Virginia Faulkner, A Life in Two Acts by Brad Bigelow.
Well, I had an IRL, is that how you say it? In real life, not sitting on my couch, Biblio adventure, which was really exciting. I got into the car with the gentleman caller and we drove to Massachusetts and we went to Duval's General Store, which just so happens to be the oldest general store in the United States.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And do you know when it was opened? Like how long? I mean,
It was 1783 or 1793. I think it was 83.
wow, that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It is a beautiful store. Just beautiful. And it's a classic general store, which means that there's food for sale there, kind of a local community hub. But when it was purchased most recently, they actually knocked a wall out to the restaurant that was next door. So now it's like a general store with a great cafe with tables in it. And the event that I went to was actually hosting a dinner afterwards that was being catered by their cafe. Sadly, by the time I knew this event was happening, the dinner part was sold out, but the author event at the beginning was still open. So I was able to attend that. And it was with Catherine Newman in conversation with Emily Franklin. Now, Catherine Newman wrote Wreck, which was a book in my top 10. And Emily Franklin's new book that's not out yet, Love and Other Monsters, is a terrific companion read to our Q1 read-along, Frankenstein. It is about Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, who is the author of Frankenstein's stepsister. It is a fictionalized account of her. So, perfect companion read.
I cannot wait to read that.
Yes. I walked in holding this copy, and Emily Franklin was very excited to see me holding it. We are hoping that she will be a guest in the spring closer to pub date. It turns out that she is local to Duval's. It's her neighborhood. And it also turns out that Duval's is owned by Ben Shattuck, who is an author, who happens to be married to Jenny Slade, who is also an author and a famous actress. And Ben Shattuck bought the store with his brother. They grew up in that area. And so I didn't know any of that when we were shopping in the bookstore. The books are spread all through the store. I loved the way that they were placed throughout. But there was a lot of Ben Shattuck books. And the gentleman caller bought a copy of The History of Sound. And as we were purchasing it, I said, wow, there's a lot of Ben Shattuck books here. And he said, that's because he's the owner of the store. And I was like, oh. It would be like going to Books Are Magic and saying, there's a lot of Emma Straub books here, you know.
Right.
Anyway, very funny. We got there early enough to be able to shop, which was lovely. We had delicious sandwiches in the cafe. The food is sublimely yummy. And then we went into another back room where they were hosting this author event, which was a conversation between these two authors. And it was the first in these Sunday suppers that they're starting. So it's a series that they're starting where they'll have an author conversation, and then you go back to another room where you're sitting and having kind of an intimate meal with the authors, which I missed and was very sad about. These two in conversation was like the perfect dream team. So Catherine Newman and Emily Franklin, they had never met before, but you wouldn't know it from the conversation. They were both very funny. They talked a lot about their process. One of the things that I thought was so interesting, Catherine Newman's novels, all three that I've read, are very short. And she said what she does before she starts writing is she puts on her computer, she opens a Word document, and she writes the numbers 1 through 25. And then she prints them, physically prints them, and then she sits down and sketches out kind of what most people would call an outline, what each of these chapters are going to be, because she feels like 25 chapters is plenty to tell a story. And her books are mostly autobiographical. You know, they're about a family, a husband and a wife who are married with 2 adult children and parents/grandparents to their children. And she said, you know, I just change all the names. But one of the first questions was, well, why don't you write memoir? And she was like, because I want to be able to make some stuff up, and I also want to be able to claim that I'm not writing about the people that I know, you know? She was so funny. I mean, I have not laughed so hard. It was such good medicine for the times that we're living in right now. Just to spend an evening with these two authors and hear them laugh and tell stories. I mean, they both started telling about their worst reviews that they've read, and it was hilarious. It was just so funny. And then Emily Franklin talks about how she writes a lot of plot points on the back of CVS receipts because they're so long and they're always readily available in your car, you know, like when you're thinking about something. And Catherine said she also writes lots of lists. She's a big list writer. And then she'll find these things, or her husband will find a piece of paper that says like pantyhose and sauerkraut. And he's like, do you need this? Like, is this like the most important plot point for your next novel? Emily Franklin said she'd be a terrible biographer because she loves to make things up. So that was funny. Someone asked Catherine if her books have been optioned for film. Both Sandwich and Wreck have been optioned by Judd Apatow, which people got so excited and gasped. I mean, I do feel like if anyone can handle her material, he can. But then she lit into this whole thing about writing is really the 10 stages of shame, and your books being optioned is the first of the 10 steps of shame. And then Emily Franklin went on to tell the difference between New York and Hollywood. And she said New York is like the publishing capital of the country, and you go down there and everyone's crabby and everything's dark, but they get things done. And she said you get flown out to Hollywood, you sit in these rooms that are bright and cheery with windows from floor to ceiling, and they bring you a coffee any way you want it, and they tell you all these things that are going to do for your books. And then you get in an elevator and the assistant turns to you and says, yeah, none of that's going to happen. Oh, it was so funny. And then Catherine Newman also told her tale about being on Good Morning America, which I will not reenact here. I did reenact it for Chris. Let's just say that it did start with them putting fake eyelashes on her and then her going out on stage and sitting on the couch and not being able to see an effing thing through her fake eyelashes. Oh, she was so funny. And her writing is very funny, so it totally made sense. It was the perfect day, a perfect way to spend a very cold winter Sunday. And I'm definitely going to be looking up Duvall's and seeing who else is coming to their author supper series. For those of you who love Annie Hartnett, she lives in the neighborhood. They mentioned her. So maybe she'll be doing one in the future. I'll keep my eyes open because her book, The Road to Tender Hearts, hit both our listener top 10 and my top 10 this year. And I'm hoping that I can take my book buddy across the table here to Duvall's in the future.
I am there for it. Absolutely. I love a good general store, too.
Yes.
But, I mean, that sounds like an amazing one for sure.
We bought a lot of things and had a delicious meal and a wonderful author event. It was just so delightful.
Well, I also had an IRL in real life Biblio adventure. I went to Huntsville, Alabama to visit family. And my mom and I visited a new independent bookstore there. They just celebrated their 1-year anniversary in September. It's called The Snail on the Wall. And I thought, what a unique name, The Snail on the Wall. And they have a cute little logo that's like a green snail, The name of the bookstore, which locals call The Snail, from conversations I overheard, people saying, yeah, I told him I was going to the Snail, is from a Virginia Woolf short story called The Mark on the Wall, which I have yet to read. I meant to download a copy to take or see if I had it at home when I got back, but I just got home last night, so I haven't read it yet. But other people have mentioned how much they enjoy that story. They had a little, maybe you can call it a shrine to Virginia Woolf in the back of the store, saying, try Virginia Woolf, and then a copy of her short stories and a little image of her and things like that. But it's a lovely bookstore. It's a storefront. It's, on the smaller side, but really bright and friendly. It was packed. I mean, people were coming and going the whole time we were there. We were there Saturday afternoon, and it was really wonderful to see that. They had, staff picks, snail picks, as they call them.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, event signage. They host author events. And then, they had a good mystery thriller section, fiction, a romance section, nonfiction, young adults, and then for younger readers as well, and then a local section. And one of the books that caught my eye in the local section is a self-published book called Alabama Hope. It's stained glass from historic churches around Alabama, photographs of the beautiful stained glass. And this is by David Graves. So got a copy of that, and I'm going to use that like a checklist for future trips to Alabama, that we could do little road trips when we're there to visit some of these historic churches. And then their front table was fantastic. They had books on their front table that haven't crossed my radar before. And of course, I came home with one of those. It's a novel called The Book of Blood and Roses by Annie Summerlee. I hadn't seen it anywhere. There were some other vampire novels on that front table, a good variety of different types of genres. But I came home with this one. Annie Summerlee lives in Spain, and she also writes in Catalan and Spanish. So it doesn't say that this one was translated, so I'm assuming she wrote it in English, which is amazing to me. I'm so in awe of people who have good language skills, because it's really a challenge for me. But this is a vampire novel. It's about a vampire hunter who is at a university, and her roommate's a vampire, and they fall in love and have adventure. I'm sure a lot of turmoil. It's sapphic, and I can't wait to dig into this one. And they were super friendly at the bookstore. When Mom and I first walked in, one of the booksellers came up and was kind of chatting with us a little bit. Really wonderful. And then later on, I was talking with one of the other booksellers, and it turns out we know somebody in common, Sharon Harris, who is the author of Her Life in Ink, who's going to be an upcoming guest. We just got to talking about literature and, where are you from? Oh, that's right. She asked me where I was visiting from. And when I said Connecticut, she said, oh, whereabouts? Which nobody ever asks, because most people don't know Connecticut.
Right.
And I said, oh, just, outside of New Haven. She's like, oh, and I was like, do you know? And so she went to grad school at UConn here and studied literature. And I asked her, I was like, oh, did you ever take a class at Sharon Harris? And she's like, yeah, she was my advisor. I'm like, oh my God, what a small world.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah. There's no such thing as 6 degrees of separation anymore. I feel like we're all a little closer than that somehow.
I definitely believe that. So if you were in the area around Huntsville, definitely stop off at Snail on the Wall bookstore. Really delightful place. And then we also went to the Huntsville-Madison County Public Library, which is in downtown Huntsville. The nickname of the place is the Fort, because from the outside, it has a pretty imposing facade, I guess you could say. It's a big brick building and has 3 floors, big space. We spent some time in there just moseying around and looking. And they had a lot of historic displays, too, which is really great, about people who served in World War II, civil rights displays. They had a huge local history section. And then they had like a genealogy section. They had books from each state, like a good variety from Connecticut, which was surprising. I also checked out Illinois, which is my home state. So really great library and very friendly staff there.
I'm so glad you and your mom got a Biblio adventure day.
Yeah, it was really fun to have that time to just kind of meander around. And I have one of her Huntsville library key fobs on my keychain now. So
right on. You're official.
The librarian said you could, feel free to do that. So whenever you're visiting, just come check out books.
Nice.
So, and my mom doesn't mind, obviously.
Yeah, you're good for it. You'll get them returned.
She knows. So what about upcoming jaunts, Emily? You have anything on the calendar?
Well, I've mentioned this before. Part of the reason I'm reading Joyride by Susan Orlean is because for the holiday, or no, was it the holiday? Yeah, for the holidays, I got a pass to the Aspen Winter Words Virtual Festival. And Susan Orlean is the first one on January 28th from 6 to 7 Mountain Time. So that's why I started Joyride. And then next week, I will also be heading to California. I'm going to be meeting my son and daughter-in-law and my little grandson, Bo. We're there to do some business and have some fun. So I'll be in LA and in Ojai, I think that's how you say it, California, both places I haven't spent time. So I'm looking forward to finding some bookish fun, even if it's just a little free library. We'll see.
Awesome.
Actually, and sometimes even when you stay, places like an Airbnb, there can be fun bookshelves. So I will report back on what happens in California.
Nice. Well, I mentioned earlier that the Thomas Merton Society, the local chapter, is sponsoring a talk with Sophronia Scott, but there was also an event with her added at Yale coming up The title of the talk is The Color of Contemplation, and that's on Tuesday, January 27th at 4:30 at the Berkeley Divinity School there, which I don't know if I'll be able to make, but we'll see how the schedule shakes out. And then also we wanted to let everyone know that the dates for Booktopia have been released. Booktopia is a long-standing, weekend-long book event that was started by Anne and Michael of Books on the Nightstand in partnership with the Northshire Bookstore many moons ago. The Northshire has changed ownership. Anne and Michael are no longer involved in Booktopia. So they did a little bit of rebranding, and they're calling it the Northshire Book Festival, a weekend in Booktopia. I love that.
It's really lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's just such a great weekend where authors are there the entire weekend. There are breakout sessions. Saturday night in the bookstore is open to the public, and all the authors speak that night. It's a place that is easy to go by yourself if you don't have someone. That's how Chris and I both started going to Booktopia, was alone. That's how we met through Booktopia. I have lots of friends, including Russell, who was in our top 10 last episode, who I met via Booktopia. So it's a great way to meet like-minded people. And what's fun about the weekend is they release the author list and books early so you can read the books. And it makes the weekend that much more interesting because you arrive and have things to talk about with people because you've read these books.
Right, exactly.
You don't have to read them, but you can.
I've done it both ways, where I've read some and not others, and it just depends. The dates for that this year are May 2nd to 4th. We'll put a link in the show notes where you can check out the author list. It is a paid event. You do have to pay for it. There's plenty of hotels and inns around the area to find places to stay. If you have any questions, they're super friendly. Reach out to them and ask, or ask us if it's something more, general about the experience. But I've heard authors say like they're blown away too, because they've rarely been in a room where everyone has read their books, or most people have read their book. And, for an author with a new book, like that has to be so exciting to be able to talk with people and get people's reactions.
Yes, indeed.
Because, at author events, they're pitching a new book.
Right.
And the assumption is most people haven't read it.
And they're trying to get people to buy it and read it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's Booktopia, everyone.
Yes, we'll put a link in the show notes.
And we should say we're going this year.
We are. Cannot wait. I've really missed it.
Me too.
Yeah.
We've gone in recent years just for like the Saturday. I don't think we went last year, and I think the year before I went alone because I had a project I was working on too.
Yeah.
Which was good. I spent time locked up in the hotel room writing my final paper for library school.
Well, that's part of the reason it's hard for me to go is I'm always in the middle of a big grant cycle, but I'm going to just block out that weekend this year.
Excellent.
How did we open the episode? Housework be damned?
Housework be damned.
Work be damned.
Work be damned. Books are coming first.
That's right. Chris, upcoming reads.
Well, I have in my stack a book I think I may have mentioned before called The Lady of Pentlands by Elizabeth Jordan, the subject of Sharon Harris's biography that I've just started reading. And this is a tribute to Elizabeth Jordan's friend, Henry James. There he is again. Kind of a take on The Turn of the Screw.
He's haunting you, Chris.
He is. I'm not going to get rid of the man. And then I also have Tales from the Haunted South, Dark Tourism and Memories of Slavery from the Civil War Era by Taya Miles. I have a hard copy, which I've had for a while, and I also downloaded the audiobook. So that is coming up for me soon. How about you?
Also for me is Night Flyer, Harriet Tubman and the Faith Dreams of a Free People, also by Taya Miles. She is going to be a guest in February. I'm really looking forward to reading this one. I believe there's also an adaptation, a film or serialized television show of that. So I will have more information by the next episode. And then I also have Tilt by Emma Patty. This is the one that Aunt Ellen talked about at our last Patreon reading salon, where we mentioned two of our favorite books of the year. And then my friend Ryan also just asked me if I'd read it. And it's an unputdownable, apparently, debut novel about a woman who is very pregnant, shopping for a crib at IKEA when in Portland, Oregon, when an earthquake strikes and she has to get herself home on foot. Cannot wait to read this. It might be my flight read.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the cover a lot. It has a bird on the cover.
Yeah, and everything's tilted,
Yeah.
like the author name and the title tilt. Well, shall we talk about our reading intentions, if there's anyone still listening?
Sure. Yes. Hello, is anyone there? So our reading intentions, we do this each year. We like to call them intentions because we don't like hard and fast goals when it comes to reading in general, because, we're both kind of mood readers, and then there's also always new books coming out and interests shift. So these are our intentions. I think the one that we both share usually is that we both like to set a reading goal. I mean, this is the only hard and fast thing, but we wouldn't cry if we didn't make it. And that is to read 52 books in a year, which is one book a week, which is, I think, a nice pace. And you could read a couple of short books to cover for really longer books if you do things like Sue Jackson's Big Book Summer, where you're reading books that are 400 pages or more. So 52 just seems like a good number that isn't too stressful.
Yeah, and I use Goodreads Reading Challenge, which is, easy to set up, and it does help me track my reading and makes it easy for me to figure out what my top 10s are and things like that. So, yes, we both share that. And then number 2 for me appeared last year as well, I believe, and it's to try to post one post a month on Ingredient One, which is a Substack newsletter that I have. I'll put a link in the show notes. So far, I'm off to a good start because on the first of the year, January 1st, I posted the best things I ate in 2025. The things I write about on Ingredient One have to do with food and literature, cookbooks, food memoirs, eating, things like that.
All the good things.
All the good things.
Yes. Well, my second thing on the list is the Kay Scarpetta reread that I'm doing with our friend John Valeri, known as the Mystery Man here on the Book Cougars. If you're a new listener, he is one of our regular guests who comes on to talk about mystery novels and other sorts of reading on a regular basis. We've done some buddy reads with him. John and I, background, he was the first friend that I made when I moved to Connecticut. And we bonded over books, of course. He's a reader and reviewer and interviewer of authors. And Patricia Cornwell's Kay Scarpetta series was one that we both bonded over. Part of our bonding was talking about that series and our love for it. And we've talked over the last couple of years about rereading it. And we decided last year to just jump in and try and do it. So we're going to read one a month. We started in December with Postmortem. Our goal is to have the book read by the last week of the month and then get together to discuss it and have pizza and donuts, which is, a good thing.
Yes.
Pizza, donuts, and coffee, like the Holy Trinity.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
And talk about blood splatter. It all makes sense.
I know, right? So, yeah, it's going to be a long haul because she's going to be publishing more along the way, but I think if she didn't, these 29 books would take us into, I think it's April 2028, if I'm not mistaken. And I do plan on writing about each of them on my blog. I just have to figure out exactly how I'm going to track what I want to track. Like I mentioned earlier, the relationships or the people mentioned, and we'll see.
Yes, indeed. So it might not be a mystery that the next time our mystery man appears on the Book Cougars podcast, it might just be about Patricia Cornwell. This one I really hope happens, but it's a stretch. I would love to attend a food writing related retreat, perhaps with Kathy Gunst, who I did do a virtual food writing class with during the pandemic and really love her teaching style. She reports on Here and Now radio. I'm not sure if it's once a week, but she does do a food report where she has recipes and talks about things. And she takes people to Italy. She does week-long writing retreats. I would love to do something with her. More to come.
Nice. I have number 4. I wrote, do research on the adaptations for our quarterly read-alongs.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, and so that means that I'll be reading the book earlier than I usually do. Like usually I wait until closer to the time of our Zoom conversation before I read the book. But like in the case of Frankenstein, I have to decide what adaptation I want to focus on, or if I maybe want to watch 2. Like an earlier adaptation and then the more recent ones. So, but I thought it'd be really fun to look into how the adaptation came to be. You know, like who wrote the script, you know, who's the showrunner, who's acting in it, and just to really get more of a vibe for the decisions that the directors or writers made for how to adapt something.
I love that. Because one of the things I was thinking about with Practical Magic is Practical Magic 2 that comes out in September is directed by a woman, whereas the first Practical Magic was directed by a man. And I'm curious how it's going to be different. Because I didn't go too in depth, but there were things about the movie that I felt like were very male centric. You know, it was very sexy in a way that I don't remember the novel being. So, yeah, I think that's really cool, Chris. And I love that idea. And I think it's just a reminder also that if we want to have an adaptation watched by the time we talk about the book on the episode, that is going to take some sketching out on our part.
Yeah.
Which takes me to my number 4, which is to watch a book-to-screen adaptation once a month is my goal. And I started a journal. I have a book journal that I keep. I mean, I have a million notebooks. If you guys could see the table right now, I have my Biblio adventure notebook, my podcast notebook, my book journal, and now I have a brand new book-to-film journal. So I'm going to really try to maintain this and think about what you're talking about. Like, what do I want to... Like, how do I want to discern how it's different from the novel or the book? Do I want to, you know, look at different adaptations of the same one, particularly for classics like Frankenstein? So I'm glad we're both thinking about that early in the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fascinating because, you know, one of them that came to mind when I've been thinking about adaptations is the Little Women, the Greta Gerwig's adaptation, where there was this scene tacked on the end that is not in the book, but it was beautiful, you know, and it really made some things come full circle.
Artistic license.
Yeah. And other adaptations fall flat, and others take just a sliver of the book and run with it. Some are completely different. Like, I think of the one Slumdog Millionaire, based on a book called Q&A.
Yeah.
Very different. And I like them both, though.
Yeah.
You know, so...
Yes. Which is a reminder that our next Patreon reading salon is going to take place before this episode drops. But it is about that. We're supposed to be bringing one of our favorite book-to-film adaptations and then one where we didn't think that it was well done for some reason.
And I think it's going to be a fun year to talk about that, to see, like, what is it that we personally like and enjoy, but then, you know, what are our fellow readers and viewers thinking and why?
Yes. And there's also this new movement. I mean, they're saying like television has had this resurgence where so much of what we watch of the series are based on books, but then they take the series so much farther than the books even went, you know?
Right.
So that'll be interesting too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I can't wait. Yeah, we binged. One of the things I forgot to mention when I was in Alabama, we binge watched the first season of A Discovery of Witches, which my sister and I had both watched and read. We've read the books by Deborah Harkness, but my mom hadn't seen it, so she got hooked, and that was a lot of fun. And that's a pretty faithful adaptation, and it's like a 3-season series, you know.
Of just the first book, right? Or is it of more than one? Because there's many books in that series.
There is. You know what? It's been a while since I've read the books, so I don't remember exactly if they ended on the same place. I think they may have. I'm not sure. That's a good question. It made me want to reread the books, but, you know, so many books, so little time. Yeah, so I want to listen to one audiobook a month.
Nice.
You know, sometimes I listen to more audiobooks. Sometimes I don't listen to them for a while. I get, you know, like... over break, I didn't drive much, and I tend to listen to them when I'm driving. But lately, like the Obsidian Sisterhood one, I did a lot of just walking around the house and doing some chores and picking things up. And so I want to try and do one a month.
That's great. I'm listening to a ton of audiobooks. Almost everything I'm reading now is audio, except when I read these advanced reader copies. But I always try to get it at least for a chapter or two, mostly because, you know, I just want to keep listening. If I have to drive somewhere or something, I'm like, I don't want to give up my reading time. So, yeah. My last one, I think I might have said it already, is to maintain my book-to-screen journal and my book journal. I got a little behind at the first of the year here And I want to really keep up with that because it helps me remember what I've read and what I've watched.
Yeah. I fell off of Goodreads a little bit and didn't do as well tracking. I actually went back to our episodes to look and see what was in the just read segment.
Yeah.
And I found a bunch of books there that I had forgotten about, when it's awful because they were great reads, all of them, So I want to get better about the Goodreads tracking and also keeping it in my book journal. And then I did sign up for a Storygraph. I mean, I've been on Storygraph for a while, but I did the paid option. And I think I'm keeping it private for now, just because I just want that to be where I track and I don't feel any social pressure, because I do need to kind of control my reading this year because I have a big research project that I'm working on. So I need to make sure that my reading time is a little bit more contained so I get that project time in as well.
Yeah, and I mean, the more you go on Goodreads, the more you want to read because you see what all your friends are reading. It's a challenge. And just what new books are coming out, too.
Well, I went through my Goodreads TBR. It was over 2,000 books.
Oh, my.
I cut that down to, I think it's 130 now.
Holy smokes.
I sliced and diced and I really thought about what is, I want it to be a tool that I actually use.
Yeah.
And it got a little sloppy because over the year, this is the second time I've cleared it out. I did that before. And, sometimes I've gone in and I've changed the number, how you can change the number, the order, and I've messed things up. So I couldn't even look at it as like a chronological tool.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Yeah. And then on Storygraph, I'm only having 3 books at a time on my TBR list. And those are the 3 that I plan on reading next.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So and that's really controlled.
For my project, I should say.
Nice.
Yeah, because I want to keep that as a clear reminder.
Yeah. Good.
So, wow, what an episode, huh? We've been chatting for a bit.
Like 5 hours. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Hats off to another reading year together. We're so glad that you're here with us. Reminder to sign up for our newsletter. It's on bookcougars.com, the sign up. It's also located in our show notes, the link for that. We will be putting out our next newsletter on January 31st.
Yeah. And until then, everybody, we wish you lots of happy reading. Thanks for listening to the Book Cougars with Chris Wallach and Emily Fine. We'll be back again with another episode in 2 weeks. Until then, come chat with us on social media, Goodreads, or email us at bookcougars@gmail.com. If you'd like to help support our podcast, please tell others about us, leave a review wherever you listen, and consider becoming a patron. Even $1 a month is a big help. Learn more about that on our website, bookcougars.com, where you'll find the show notes for this and all of our past episodes.
Thanks, everybody.
This episode was edited by Pat Keogh Sound Design.